Hi, good morning. All right, thank you, Mandalee and Cape Tap. Really appreciate all of your help and support, and just good morning to everybody in the room. I see some familiar names and faces, and I'm excited for people that I don't know today to be part of this presentation. So this is dual enrollment for all CAEP programs. How we'll start off is to introduce the team. So we'll just kind of start with Felisa.
Good morning. My name is Felisa Valabi. I'm a counselor at Gianza College. I work with our adult school transitions, our ESL populations, and our undocumented students on campus.
And then Nuri.
Hello, my name is Nuri. I'm a student success specialist at Foothill College for adult education. So I work with the Adult Ed Consortium and help students with transitions.
And Desiree.
I'm Desiree Torres, and I'm a counselor at HSD Adult School, and I work with all CAPE students.
Shreepra.
My name is Sripriya Kannan, and I'm with the Palo Alto Adult School. I am the transitions counselor in ESL testing. My focus is only ESL adults.
And Tiffany.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tiffany Rodriguez-Tran. I am the Senior Program Coordinator over at Gianza, particularly for career education programs, all dual enrollment, non-credit programs, and adult ed.
Great. So now that we've introduced ourselves, we would like to see who's in the room, and we're curious about what your role is in your consortium here today. And I see some people have just popped on, so we're just taking a poll to see what your role is in the consortium. So we'll give it a few more moments. We're at about 80% right now. Okay. Okay, so, oh, good. All right. Like we got some leads, some adult school admin in the room. Welcome. We got some staff at the adult schools and some dean's admin at the colleges and some faculty here. And some college classified. All right, this is great. Okay, so we will continue on here with our learning outcomes for today. So what we're really going to be looking at today is in 3 sections. The first section, we're going to be looking at who we are as a consortium and how dual enrollment fits in. And we'll get introduced to our structure, our planning vision, and how dual enrollment fits into that vision. The second part of the presentation will be on how the implementation process happened for expanding dual enrollment to all CAEP programs. And then the third section will be dual enrollment in action. And so what we will be looking at is learning the process, like the steps it takes to help students become dual enrolled. And then we'll also discuss some common barriers, best practices, and areas of growth. And so we will have designated section, slides. There's like, hey, any questions that happen after. But if there are questions along the way, please either raise your hand or put it in the chat, and we will try to address them as they come in. Okay, all right. So for the first part, who we are and how dual enrollment fits in. So we are the North Santa Clara County Consortium for Adult Education, and we are 5 schools. We have Fremont Union High School District Adult School, MVLA, Foothill College, Palo Alto, and De Anza. And MVLA is Mountain View Los Altos, and we are direct funded. Here's our consortium model of work, right? We have 4 standard consortium teams, which is our leadership board, a director, our data team, and our transition support team. And we also have special projects with this CTE pathway and articulation team. So today we're really going to be mostly focusing on our transition support team, which is the members that are in the room with me today, the team members with us today, and also maybe a teeny bit about the data team as well. So the goal of our 3-year plan and the goal of our consortium really is to help consortium members cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate in order to build, guide, and support students through education and career pathways. So the bolded sections are the sections of our goal and our vision that we will be looking at today. So when we first look at cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate, right, in order to meet these goals and help our students on the pathway, what does that really mean and what does that look like for us? So when we look at cooperation, right, it's just basically sort of, it's a low stake engagement. It's really basically sharing information. And this is when we have our job fairs and our resource event fairs. We have our college info sessions at the adult schools. Coordination is a little bit higher stakes. It takes a little bit more planning and more resources are shared. This is sort of our application workshops at the adult schools, our safe seats in our community college courses for our adult students. And then when we go over to the collaboration, which is it's a higher stakes engagement. We share a common vision and resources and results are shared. And so this is our Counseling 5 is an adult only dual enrollment course. And it's also where we have high-level adult ESL students getting into our CTE healthcare pathway. So all of these examples are going to be looked at later on in the session when we are looking at our best practices. Also, too, there's a link that will be shared in the chat for the Building Sustainable Collaborative Partnerships. It is a CAEP training that's on the CAEP website, which is where this cooperation, coordination, and collaboration model came from. Thank you, Mandalee, for putting that in the chat. So back to our goal. So here we've talked about the cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate really briefly. And so let's just look at these pathways for a moment. And the reason why we're sort of sharing this is to let you see how dual enrollment is really embedded in the way that we think about the work that we do. It's not just something that we do, oh, we have this dual enrollment and it's kind of off to the side. It really is embedded in the way that we in our philosophy as a consortium. And so when we look at the student education journey map, this pathway map, really what we're trying to do is help students find the path, enter the path, stay on the path, and complete the path. And all these arrows that you see that move in between and helping students reach their goal really is how we look at transitions or moving students from one part of the path or one goal to the next. So when we think about these transitions, right, when we think about these lines that are happening in between these pathway points, right, we're really looking at, oh, pardon me. Oh, geez, how did that happen? I apologize. Just one second. Okay, so when we're looking at these squiggly lines that are going in between the pathway points, right, what we're really looking at is the types of transitions that we have in our consortium, right? So we have 3 main types of transitions. We have ESL and high school diploma GED students, right, that are moving to post-secondary CTE that we offer at our adult schools. Right, so this isn't even a movement into the colleges. This is just transitions and movements for students within our adult schools. We also have adult school students transitioning to colleges, right, to their colleges without dual enrollment, right? And then we have our dual enrollment between our adult school and our colleges. And that's really what we're focusing on today. So why dual enrollment, right? So for us, dual enrollment is an equitable and accessible opportunity for students, right, to enter college. It's available to all CAEP programs, independent of high school diploma status, right? So this is really important, and this is the meat of sort of this presentation today, is that I would imagine for most of us in the room, you know, when we think about CAEP students at the adult schools, most of them are ELL learners in ESL programs. Some of our adult schools don't have high school diploma programs, and so having dual enrollment tied to having to be a high school diploma or a GED student really limits the accessibility and the availability to utilize dual enrollment. So that's sort of like what has expanded dual enrollment for our consortium, is the fact that it was opened up to all CAEP programs. Right, at our within our consortium also, dual enrollment is open to all college courses. And we mostly focus on high school diploma, GED, high-level ESL, and CTE students. So the three main ways students access dual enrollment in our consortium is through individual courses, right? So students just take individual courses. They're, you know, they just have individual goals. A lot of these are high school diplomas, students utilizing to accelerate learning, earning their high school diploma, right? GED and post-secondary opportunities for our GED students and other EGE courses, or ESL students use it to explore other ESL opportunities and other GE courses, general education courses. So these are just individual courses that students take. We also have safe seats, right, which we saw in our cooperation, collaboration, and coordination slide, right? We save seats in targeted pathway courses for our students to make sure that they're able to get in, because one of the barriers that you'll see later on is that dual enrollment students, you know, are in the like the 8th group for registration. So sometimes courses close by the time they're able to register. So we save seats so that they're able to get into these courses. And a lot of those are in our K through Success parent ed students who enter our early childhood education pathways. And then we also have our ESL summer bridge courses at Foothill that we save seats for. And then we have our adult school only course, right? It's Counseling 5 at De Anza, and this is only, it's a closed course. It's only for our dual enroll. It's only for our adult school students. One of the members at the colleges who's on our transition support team teaches the course. And we also have embedded tutor and wraparound support for that course. All right, so that's sort of just a fundamental sort of brief sort of background and intro to our consortium and sort of the philosophy of how we think about dual enrollment and how it's really embedded in the way we think about the work that we do. So before we move on to the next section, are there any questions about this section? I don't see any. Were there any in the chat? Nope. Are the courses, yes, through dual enrollment. Right, and Felice, I don't know, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I can take a couple of these actually.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
for our dual enrollment students, they're considered special admits, and so their fees are waived. There are a couple of exceptions with that based on some particular visa restrictions, but for the most part, students have their fees completely waived, and so the course is free. It doesn't cover like textbooks, but we've been able to work with the adult schools to find some funding for that kind of situation. The content for Counseling 5 is kind of an intro to counseling class. We talk about the systems, how you use them, what it means to drop. So it's really kind of an onboarding into college, which is why we have that as one of our kind of fundamental examples of using it for dual enrollment before they start taking classes kind of as a fully embedded college student. Oh, there's so many questions.
Yeah, so Shannon, we'll be discussing that in the next section. Oh, is there ed code relating to opening it up to all CAEP programs? Yeah, that is the second section of we will definitely dive into all of that. Felice is going to give that information.
If a student is about to end a program but has already been approved for dual enrollment, is the dual enrollment still good? Yes. So as long as the intention is that the student was enrolled at the same time, their adult school folks have signed off on it, and the form has been filed, they are considered an adult ed dual enrollment student. The next question is, does SB 554 allow colleges to offer ADE to all? ADE is adult dual enrollment. Is that what ADE is? To all CAEP. So we're going to talk a little bit about SB 554 in one of our sections as well. So I'll come back to the SB 554 language. How do you fund the dual enrollment classes? Tiffany, do you have that answer? They're coded the same way as our special admins for our high school dual enrollment students. Tiffany, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, they're as long as they're categorized as dual enrollment through the dual enrollment form in the process, yeah, they're categorized as this regular, kind of like the funding is similar to the high school special admins.
Yeah,
But I do
and
want to
we'll-
make a note that when students apply, and we go through the dual enrollment form, if they're not listed as a special admin adult student, then we change that so that they are listed as a special admin adult school student.
I'm sorry, I was thinking more specifically about, like, do you have a set aside for, FTEFs, especially for dual enrollment for adult ed, or is it part of a larger dual enrollment fund for the colleges?
Tiffany, do you have that answer? They get put in the same bucket as our special admits.
Okay, so nothing extra, it just you schedule and it's okay.
Yeah, and for questions like that, we can actually probably do some more digging for you and get back to you if you want to put your contact information in the chat.
Great.
Because we did have to figure those pieces out way back in the day when we first implemented this, so it does exist. I just don't know that I have any more specifics other than they're counted in the same bucket as our special admins.
Thank you very much. I'll put my info in the chat. Appreciate it.
Great.
Mhm.
And then
Okay, and-
there's a question from David Woods just asking about how we help students fill
Yeah.
out the forms, and
We're
we
gonna
will
go
go
over
over that in section 3 in step-by-step detail.
Yep. Okay. So I think we
Okay.
can move on.
I think oh wait, Linda, you had your I know Linda had your hand up, or
Actually, it was addressed already. Thank you. I appreciate it.
oh yeah, right on, Linda. Okay, and then no, so this is another Linda asked, do ESL students need to be currently enrolled in in a high school diploma equivalency program to qualify? No, and so that, Linda, is really sort of the crux of this presentation, is that they do not need to be tied to a high school diploma or an an equivalency program to be able to qualify for the dual enrollment.
So, and then the last question that I'll address before we move on is that there's a question in chat about the colleges wanting to keep calling it concurrent enrollment versus dual enrollment. It has been my understanding that colleges have used those words interchangeably. And so the way that they implement that, it's really about making sure that they are just considered special admits so that they can have their fees waived and be considered the same way that our dual enrolled like high school students get to be categorized. And so sometimes that's concurrent enrollment, sometimes that's dual enrollment. That is had been my understanding of the way that those have been used interchangeably. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, all right. Thanks for all the questions, though, everybody. Make the training more robust. Okay, so here we go. Next poll. Have you implemented dual enrollment for adult school students? Kind of just wanted to see, like, in the room where everyone is at with the dual enrollment.
Hold on one second. I'm having some issues with the poll.
Okay,
Okay, here we go.
awesome. Thanks, Holly.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're at about 65%. We'll give it another moment. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Share results. Okay, so this is great. We've got some people in the room who are offering many dual enrollment courses. We got some that are offering some. We have a lot that are just getting started, and we've got a handful that have not started yet. Okay, great. Oh. Can everyone see the results? Okay. All right, great. Okay. All right, so this next section is really about the implementation, and our expert on that, Felisa, will be taking this one.
Yeah, sure. There's also a question to clarify in the chat that
Oh.
I'd be happy to address really quick that says, when referring to adult schools, are you referring to schools in the K-12 system? Community colleges tend to refer to adult learners as non-credit students. So yeah, we've kind of talked about this in our consortium about what's considered a CAEP student, right? And so those non-credit courses at the community college would be considered that. When we are talking about our dual enrollment setup that we have, it is specific for the adult schools that exist in the K-12 systems and our partners. So that was a good clarification question. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the implementation and how we got to do this. Part of the clarification in this is that I have previously worked in the adult schools and was a counselor for the adult schools for years before I came over to the community college. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I think we've got, yeah, so way back in the day in 2015, we were really seeing this dual enrollment issue and having adult school students not qualifying for dual enrollment, but also not having a high school diploma or a GED and navigating systems, and therefore not really being eligible for things like federal aid. And we saw it as an equity issue. It was a really clear equity issue. And so I started trying to connect to our community colleges and asking the presidents and asking the board and the chancellors to consider our students as special admits. And I just kept getting pushback that said that that was a state chancellor level decision and that there was nothing they could do about it. But in 2015, we attended the Coalition on Adult Basic Education in Denver, and we discovered through Santa Barbara City College and their adult school program that special admits is actually a local board decision. And who gets qualified for that is, again, a local board decision. And so we'll show you the ed code in that as well. But that was kind of a changing moment to give us the language we needed to push forward. And then in 2017, our Dean of Language Arts had actually then helped us create a position at the community college so that he was overseeing a counselor that was focused on adult schools. And so I had transitioned from the adult schools into the community college, and he helped us create an opening day presentation for the district. And that included a student panel discussing their experiences with transitioning from adult school to community college, talked about some of the barriers, and it really sparked the work groups and the collaboration on campus because it was the first time we had invited the community colleges to be a part of it, kind of in an intentional way where it was accessible to them and not just having, sent out invitations to meetings. And then in 2019, we did another presentation for opening day for the district, and it focused on data and really talked about kind of the opportunities that we had and the need for adult school students to be considered special admits. And at the time, our director was really instrumental in being strategic and invited our chancellor and all of the board members. And so our chancellor and a couple of the board members showed up to that. And the presentation was really well received. And in fact, they kind of lit a fire under us and said, okay, no, so now go do this. This definitely needs to happen. At the same time that was happening, you can go to the next slide. SB 554 came out in 2019. And so that helped kind of have people's awareness of, oh, there is conversation about adult school students being special admits, but the work we were doing was kind of outside of that. And so when that came out, it helped us, but it wasn't the justification that we were using at the time to implement a dual enrollment policy and board policy. So we brought the proposal through shared governance at De Anza. We shared it with the stakeholders at Foothill. We got it to the board. And in January of 2020, the board voted to approve it. And it included all CAEP funded programs for eligibility. And then in 2020, after that, we met with admissions and records on both campuses to figure out how to implement that. What does it look like? What is the logistics? Are we covered if we're covering it to all of CAEP funded? Who's going to fill it out? All of those pieces about how to implement it. We really spent a lot of time with both colleges figuring out how to get that done in 2020 after the board policy was approved. Next slide. So here's the ed code that we used to really justify why this was specific to adult school students and that we decided it was CAEP funded, because the idea is really about the students that are utilizing the CAEP funded programs and not, community interest or community ed. It was really about those CAEP funded. So this ed code says the governing board of a community college district may admit to any community college under its jurisdiction as a special part-time or full-time student in any session or term any student who's eligible to attend community college pursuant to section, and then those are the numbers. So this became the big one that we really used. And then the second one, if you want to go, this is also the ed code that we utilized, right? So it says the governing board of a school district may determine which pupils would benefit from advanced scholastic or vocational work. The intent of this section is to provide educational enrichment opportunities for a limited number of eligible pupils. And so this also helped us think about ways to explain why adult ed and dual enrollment was an equity issue. Oh, the slides aren't showing apparently.
Oh,
Is anyone else not seeing them?
I
So
can
I'm
see
seeing
them.
this, I'm seeing the slides. So the participant that cannot see them, I'll private chat you.
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
Okay, great.
And then this is SB 554, right, that we have seen. This was approved in October of 2019. So by the time we had gotten to our board to get this approved in 2020, we did use this language, but this just kind of solidified it. It really wasn't the justification that we were using. And so most of you, I think, have seen the language in Senate Bill 554, but it does, in fact, authorize the governing board of a school district overseeing an adult education program or the governing board of a community college district to authorize adult school students and high school diploma or high school equivalency as special part-time students. I think Tiffany was going to take this, but I'm happy to do this, Tiffany, if you want me to. This was the form that we created. It was, we created it to have it be across the district, which is something that I don't know if anyone works in colleges in districts that are more than one college. It doesn't often happen where we have district-wide consensus on many things. And so it was a big deal for us to have had this be something that we created across the district as a way to verify what's the CAEP funded program that they're in. It addressed questions from enrollment services from the colleges. We clearly kind of walked through and it modeled after our high school dual enrollment form as well. The differences really are that there isn't a parent signature and that we have a representative from the adult school as the person instead of a specific counselor or admin at the high schools. Anything you want to add, Tiffany?
No, not really. It's essentially similar to high school dual enrollment, except and in the same way, this form, and we really have to have people designated to accept the form and work really well with folks in admissions and things like that. But the form itself is rather straightforward and adopted from the high school one.
Rhonda has a question. Is that a typo on my part? It's for Senate Bill 554 and I did it 544.
Yep.
Yeah, so Rhonda, that was my bad. Thanks for showing that. So everybody on this slide, it's 554, not 544. Thank you.
And then the form does have to be completed every quarter to verify that the student is in fact still enrolled in the adult school. So they do have to resubmit one every quarter that they want to be considered a dual enrollment student.
Another question is, so the form has to be used every semester, and is there verification of adult school enrollment? So we receive the form typically from the transition specialist at the adult school. So that's how we would verify that they're still attending.
And Shannon, we'll go over that in the next section. All right. So are there any other questions for Felisa or Tiffany at this point? Okay. I get this, but Rick has a question. It says, you might get to this, but did all the board approval action mean you didn't need some adult ed version of a CAEP agreement or any separate MOUs? Or a CCAP, sorry.
Correct. Yeah, we don't have a CCAP for our adult school dual enrollment because we have it as a board policy. Go ahead, Tiffany.
So I, as the CCAP dual enrollment coordinator over at DeAnza, we do have a CCAP partnership with the Fremont Union High School District that includes the Fremont Union, this adult school that we have. So we don't have any actual CCAP classes with them, but doesn't mean that we might not have in the future. It's an easy change since we already have an existing CCAP partnership with this district.
But the dual enrollment, adult ed dual enrollment board policy was created separate from CCAP agreements, and then there are no separate MOUs.
All right, it doesn't look like there's any other questions in the chat for this. Okay. All right, so now we're at the point in time where we're going to look at dual enrollment in action, right? And we are going to be looking at the process of helping students become dual enrolled. We're going to look at our common barriers, our best practices, and areas of growth. Okay, so the process. So just kind of going back and embedding this in, our overall vision and the philosophy of the work that we do, right? This is the section where we really are looking at guide and support students through these pathways. All right, so the process. So Desiree is going to be leading the discussion on this section.
So the first step in the dual enrollment process is that the student has to apply to the college. So in this case, they either apply to Foothill or DeAnza College, and it has to be in the same quarter that they want to take courses. We do have a best practices to support the student with the application. As many of you know, CCC Apply has like 127 questions on it. And so we try to guide the student through the application process, and it can take up to 10 days.
So then we go on to course selection, where we help the students based on what their goals are for moving on to a community college course. And we help them figure out which classes they might be wanting to take. And also with this is ESL placement tests that they might need to take in order to qualify for certain classes. And if they want to further talk about their academic plan or goals, we help them to make appointments with the community college counselors at DeAnza and Foothill, and they will help and guide the students with any of their specific community college course questions.
Okay, and then the next step is we help the student fill out the form. So it's called dual enrollment special admit form, the one that we just showed. With my students, I use IK12. It's a workflow automation system, and it works really well for my students. And then Palo Alto MBLA, they actually use an Adobe link on the college website, and the form is pretty easy to use. It only takes a few minutes.
And so before we move on, most of these steps 1, 2, and 3 are really done at the adult school, right? They're done with the adult school transition counselors and advisors. And then if there are, roadblocks or, running against, some sort of wall or something, then that's when they reach out to the colleges, like in step 2, right? Help, and then the colleges help answer specific student questions. So just as a heads up, just to, reiterate that this is still at the point in time when this work is being done at the adult schools.
Then the next step 4 is adult school approval. So we review the form, and as Desiree said, that her school, they use the IK-12, and she signs to approve, and then it's routed to the college. At Palo Alto and MVLA, we review the form on the Adobe link, and we sign to approve it, and then it automatically gets sent to the community colleges. And an additional step we have with that is we take the Adobe form, the downloaded PDF, and we also send it directly to our either Tiffany or Nuri at Foothill to kind of notify that we have submitted this dual enrollment form on behalf of the student. So they are also aware ahead of time that it's coming through.
Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Are we, next slide?
And
Oh, no, sorry.
well, step 5 is it goes to the colleges, and I think the colleges could probably speak on this, but it's up to, they have to approve the dual enrollment form, and it can take up to 2 weeks on the maximum. Right, Tiffany, is that been your experience?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Step 5 for the colleges to approve the dual enrollment.
Yes, so on our side, I filter through the form first, as you said, that the forms from this transition specialist goes to me to approve, to look it over before I send it off to admissions. I reply back very quickly, as does Nuri for Foothill, but it can still take some time to, if it's not me or Nuri, it could take still up to 2 weeks. Typically, it only takes a few days. I want to talk about some of the internal barriers for college-wide that might happen for when you are thinking about for your own dual enrollment processes at your school with adult ed, tagging the student, and if they're non-residency, they haven't been here for a year, things like that, with all the fraud applications as well, going through community colleges, applications getting stuck. So lifting those areas for the student, because, right, if they are special admit, just like high school students, they don't have to be like verify residency, things like that as much, unless, there's that visa restriction, right, that Felisa can talk about. But in general, I look over the student, I look over the form, I look over, do they have an updated app? If there's fraud holds residency, then I would be the one to follow up internally with admissions and say, hey, this student is an adult ed student, dual enrollment, here's the form, please process them as through the as non-resident, like special admit, and lift the fraud hold, things like that. And then just like high school dual enrollment, once the form is processed, the student can add into whichever course section they want to add, right, for the class. Whereas I believe it's a little different over at Foothill.
All right, we've got we got a couple questions in the chat. So Tim is asking, how are you marketing adult dual enrollment to students? Tim will get to that more specifically when we get into the best practices. And then Noah, is the enrollment process done through the semester or during specific months? We will address that a little bit more in the best practices, but Shripriya, and Desiree, you both do it throughout the semester too, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we have, oh, go ahead.
Just to clarify, we're also a quarter system, so
Yeah.
there's a lot more opportunities for students to enter in. And so it does work pretty well for the adult schools to be able to support students throughout the year when it's their time and they're ready to transition. And so those things do happen per student need per quarter.
But we will talk about that in more detail a little bit when we get to best practices. And then who supports the student with course selection in part 2? Rick is asking at the adult ed. So when we go to step 2, help students course select. So,
Usually I tend to meet with my students that do have a goal of going to community college and find out what their goals are. And we work through that as a starting point. If they need beyond that, I do make appointments with them, with the community college counselors to further explore those goals.
and then Audrey is asking, how are you choosing the student that is approved? Are there any best practices? Is there any support being provided for students to remain their attendance at adult school while attending community college courses? I think we'll look at that when we get into the best practices. Okay. Let's see. So here we are. Okay, so then step 6.
So once we know the student is approved for dual enrollment, I reach out to the student and I have them meet with me and I connect them to resources. I like to send out important dates at the college, make sure they have the technology that they need to get started. And then we do offer tutoring at my adult school. And so I connect them with the tutor. And then another part of the process is that we want students to continue with dual enrollment. And so I meet with them quarterly so they can continue.
Okay, so that is the process. Before we move on to common barriers, are there any other questions about these 6 steps?
I will just also add that one of the fun things about collaborating with the adult schools from the community college perspective is that in that 6-step process, there's a lot of in between that happens for the students. So it could be that Desiree is reaching out to me and saying, hey, we've got this specific question about like prereqs for nursing, right? And then I'm happy to work with them and try to figure out what that looks like. Or she's making an appointment with me with the student before they get there so they can have an understanding of what times are available for classes, or they need help trying to think through the guided self-placement, or all of those pieces. There's a lot of back and forth that happens when we're trying to work with students collectively, and that is an important piece of how that works. We've also even had it where our adult school transition folks come to those appointments with their students to really help kind of translate between the different entities, because there is quite a jump, right, that happens from the adult schools into the community colleges.
And then yes, Rhonda, there is a unit cap. Is that
It's 11 for our quarter system, and it's 6 for the summer.
and so would that translate to semester as well, or would that be different?
So for us, full-time is 12 units, so it's less than full-time. That's the understanding of it. I actually don't know how that would translate to semester, but ours parallels what the high schools can also take. That's how we decided on the unit count.
Okay. All right. And then, yes, Megan, it's interesting. Yeah, ability to benefit is on the agenda for our next leadership board meeting. So we are looking at that right now. So if anyone has any tips or insight on to how ability to benefit benefits their students, we're all ears. Okay, Yvonne. So you may cover this later, but what is the underlying funding mechanism for your non-SB 554, hold on, students under SB 554? Colleges are reimbursed by the community, by the California Community College Chancellor's Office, but how are you funding the additional students that benefit from your program? Lisa, are you able to take this?
Yeah, Tiffany and I were just talking about this. It's the same question that has now come up a couple of times. As far as we know, they are funded the same way that our high school dual enrollment students are considered special admits. And that is as far as my understanding of how that works is. If you want specifics and how I can dig through and ask our admissions and records, if you put your contact information in the chat, we're going to do some more digging and look it up. But we have always just had it parallel our high school dual enrollment special admin process.
All right. Okay, and Karina said that Cabrillo uses 11 units for their semesters. For everybody who's on the semester system, Cabrillo uses 11 units. Okay, great. All right. So now we're going to move on to the next section of our dual enrollment in action, which is our common barriers. All right.
Well, one of the more common barrier between the two, it's the different processes that the two colleges have. So they have, as we said earlier, that they have so we use a Adobe link through our Palo Alto, and in Foothill, that Adobe link is initiated by the student, and at De Anza, that's initiated by the counselor. So it's a matter of coordinating, making sure that that the process of the form gets channeled the correct way, and that the students understand that this process. And another one is that the quarters and breaks don't align with necessarily with the adult school timing. So we have to make sure that we get our dual enrollments in prior to the start of the community college timings.
Another barrier that I mentioned earlier is the application. There's a lot of institutional language in the application, so some students may not understand how to fill it out. And other things that I've seen with our students is applying for the wrong quarter. So they do have to apply. The first time they apply, they have to apply for the quarter that they want to attend. And so sometimes students will be in a workshop and they'll accidentally just select the wrong quarter. And so that does kind of pause the process. Also applying to the wrong college, so they want to go to De Anza, but somehow they applied to Foothill. So little things like that that we just have to like double check with the student to make sure they're supported. And then sometimes they'll do the CCC apply account, create the account, but not actually apply to the college. And then for those of you that are familiar with ID.me, it's difficult. And so it's been a challenge this school year for students to verify their identity. So that's another way that it's another barrier for students.
So another major barrier are account issues. So if we need to communicate with the colleges if there's account holds such as fraud, any residency reclassification that needs to happen if an incorrect visa was identified or along those lines. If the colleges can't find the CWID to match up with the student, or if there's a visa restriction.
All right. Okay. All right.
Some other common barriers are registration. Sometimes at De Anza, the students need to wait for their dual enrollment gets approved, and then they have to wait for their registration turn, and then they add the class into their portal. And sometimes the students do that before it's their time, and that negates the dual enrollment and incurs a fee. So we have to backtrack and make sure that the students understand that they have to wait. So in that, the adult school students tend to have the last group to register. So so that's usually group 8. And at De Anza, you have to register for 2 consecutive quarters to continue with your dual enrollment status. And maybe you might move up in your registration group at that point. And at Foothill, you tend to remain in group 8 as far as an adult school to register for a class. And with that, what happens is that many classes tend to fill up before our students have a chance to register for their class.
And then that's where, you know, for certain classes, we do the save seats, right, to help mitigate that situation.
But
And so
yeah, I was going to say many times if they remain on the wait list patiently, they can eventually get the class that they want.
And then data barrier that we have is, you know, really being able to track adult school students at Foothill De Anza more effectively and in real time. So our data team is really working on trying to be able to track our students. Right now we use spreadsheets, right? Internal spreadsheets, but they have their limits for scalability. So, data is always a point of need, and a lot of the times there's barriers that are included in that.
And then just general navigation of the college system. Some of our students, it's their first time in college, so recommending that they start out with one class to ensure that they continue and remain successful in the community college arena. And navigating the college system in general, as far as when they select a class, to be able to identify the prerequisites and that they meet those prerequisites prior to entering or registering for the class.
All right, there's questions. And also too, if, there are, as we did the poll, and there are a lot of people in the room who are doing, utilizing dual enrollment at their agencies and within their consortium. So if you have other common barriers or best practices, as we go along, you can please feel free to enter them into the chat so that we can all learn from each other. All right, so before we move on, are there any other questions about common barriers? Okay. Okay, hold on. I got Linda. Do you have systems in place to make sure students complete their college courses successfully? So we'll talk about that a little bit in best practices, but that's also always part of areas of growth as well. So, all right. So here we go. Dual enrollment in action, best practices. Okay, so when we're looking at our best practices, we're going to break it down into these 4 sections: best practices for our transition support team, at the adult school, at the colleges, and then data. Okay, so best practices of the transition support team. So right now something that we have gotten to is that we have a good level of representation of roles in the transition support team, right? So we have outreach coordinators, counselors, advisors, all from the adult schools and the colleges. And as you've heard, and Felicia pointed this out, is that the reason why this all works is because of the transition support team. I always kind of say the leadership board is the brains of the consortium, and the transition support team is the heart of the consortium. And so it's because of having the right people in the room that allows this dual enrollment process to really thrive. And so we have our monthly meetings. We have monthly meetings with our full team, which includes adult schools and colleges. And then we also have a monthly meeting that's just with the adult school team. And we meet before the full team to sort of prep, talk about things that are just, adult school situational, and then prep for the full team. And then we meet as a full team after that. We have a shared we have a shared Google Calendar, which we put our holidays, our busy times, where we schedule all of our events, our testing, our meetings, so that we have a common place to be able to all come back to be able to really get an overview of the work that we're doing. And then also too, to someone else's point about, do we offer, sort of the recruitment and the dual enrollment throughout the full semesters, right? Or throughout the year, if you're on a semester, we're on quarters. But what we did do is that we identified main transition times, right? So the December, June for the adult schools to college. So a lot of, as you'll see, the outreach the best practices of the outreach that we do and opportunity exploration events are sort of planned backwards from those 2 main transition times. And then we also have a shared dual enrollment tracking spreadsheets. We have a couple of those. We'll just share one right here. This is for our counseling 5. So we've removed the student info here, but basically this is shared with the team where we're able to put the course information. So this is for counseling 5. for this year. And well, actually, we're moving Counseling 5. It used to be a late start spring course, but we're trying it summer session 1 this year for the first time. So we'll see how that goes. But so we have this spreadsheet, right? It has all the information. The teacher who's going to teach this, Christian, is on it. And so we're able to say, like, oh, the dual enrollment form has been submitted. You know, are there any issues with it? Are they registered? And so this is really helpful for us to be able to keep track of the work that we're doing. And then we have our best practice what for our adult schools and our colleges. So the instructional content for Counseling 5, Felisa, do you want to take that one again?
Sure. So Counseling 5 really does focus on this idea of getting students kind of set up and prepped for navigating our systems, right? I think that's one of the pieces that is a big barrier in coming from adult schools into the community colleges. So it talks about, you know, how to use our banner system or Canvas and, you know, the logistics of being onboarded as a student. And because we have in our program in particular, there are counselors dedicated to working with adult school students in addition to other populations on campus, but we are tasked to work with adult school students, which means we have an understanding of kind of the unique needs of students coming from the adult schools and the unique opportunity to have there be a mix of students from ESL or high school diploma or GED. And so Christian really has catered that curriculum to meet the needs of the students that are coming from the adult schools. And in particular, like this year, because we've moved it from a late start spring into maybe an early summer, one of the things that we're thinking about is there a way for us to prep students to be even more successful in that class? So maybe doing some workshops around technology and making sure that they have access to the systems they need even before that class starts, right? So that's definitely a piece that we are implementing to make that Counseling 5 as relevant for our adult school students as possible. Yeah.
And as Desiree had mentioned before, you know, that our Counseling 5 has an embedded tutor in it. It's provided by FUHSD Adult School, so that there is, and also to Linda, that is one of the best practices, you know, for helping students complete classes, right, is really having a strong tutor support system for, you know, we know that we can't do that for every single dual enrollment opportunity, but we can identify ones where, you know, we're really targeting in the pathway to be able to help include those extra wraparound supports for students. All right, so best practices for adult schools and colleges. We'll start with the adult schools.
Yeah, so some of the best practices for our adult schools is to hold college information nights. So we have a few every school year. We kick off the school year with a college information night, usually in like October. And so we recruit students for dual enrollment there. We like to set it up where the application workshop at the adult school is scheduled about a week or two after, so that students, if they're interested, can get help with the application. I also created a dual enrollment video since we have kind of rolling enrollment at our adult school. Students can watch the video and learn more, and then we can get them inducted at any point, any quarter point. And then we do target certain students. So at those college information nights, we invite our target students to attend those.
I tend to have one-on-one meetings with all my advanced flow adult school students who they are the most advanced level, and next step would be to move on from our program. And so I meet with these students at the beginning when they enter our program and along the way to make sure that we're meeting whatever goals they have, and to encourage them to do dual enrollment if they would be inclined to. And then I also meet with them at the end of right before they're ready to exit our program, if there is another possibility for them to be able to move on to the community colleges. We constantly have flyers, announcements, and reminders, which we collaborate with the community colleges. When they have flyers, we present them those opportunities to the appropriate students in our program. And we also do college visits throughout the year. When De Anza has their welcome day, or if I have enough students who are interested in possibly going on to community college, We do college campus visits, so they understand and are able to navigate the colleges, and as well as their career fairs. And we do have college visits even on our campus. We have colleges come to our placement tests to see if they're test out students who would like to move on, or maybe are more advanced students who would like to do dual enrollment at the same time as placing into our program.
And just to add to that, I think a big piece of this is really the collaboration. So this school year, Foothill and De Anza are visiting my school about 8 times. And so that's like pretty much every 6 weeks or so. So there's a ton of collaboration and support between the schools.
And for the colleges?
So as a college, we get invited quite frequently to events such as career and college information nights. And then that is followed by application workshops. We invite adult schools for campus tours, and then we also go to a bunch of tabling, and tabling includes also placement tests to see if there are any students that didn't get into the classes because of the overflow of the students. They didn't get a spot, and possibly we will have a spot. And that also works, and then we can transition students back and forth depending on their needs. Both colleges have dual enrollment webpage dedicated to adult education students, and we both provide flyers for dual enrollment to adult schools.
And then Tiffany, I was wondering if you could, here we have, I'm sorry, I don't know why this is. Sorry, I'm clicking things and they're going crazy. Okay, so here we go. Just want to make sure that was there where we were. And now here we are. So this is just a couple of images, right? This is a career fair that we had at one of the adult schools. We also, this is a college info night that we just referenced. And then here is the flyer. There was a request in the chat. Is that possible to put this flyer in the chat? And then it was also a request for the spreadsheet. Right now, I don't have just a simple straight template of it without the info, but if you put your email in the chat or email me, I'll put my email in the chat again or in the chat. And if you email me, then I can kind of strip it down and send it out. Okay. And so data, we're just going to take just a couple quick slides on data just to kind of show sort of our growth, right? And so this is dual enrollment unduplicated head count. So we really sort of started this effort in 21, 22. And then it ends in 24, 25. This is the latest data that I pulled off of our spreadsheet actually this morning. And so it shows the growth. There's a teeny bit of a dip here for 24, 25. We are already in our spring quarter, and we are 4 students less than last year, but that is due to the fact that we've moved our Counseling 5 course to summer session 1 this year. So actually for our data, we don't have any Counseling 5 student data for the 24-25 year. So and right now there's about 23 in Counseling 5, so we're missing those numbers. So really, in a sense, there is a growth this year in just students. So this is just unduplicated student head count. The next slide is duplicated, right? So we have our unduplicated and our unduplicated and our duplicated. So what this shows is with the light orange is the slide before, right? Are these numbers. And then, so this is just per student, and this is how many opportunities they're taking, right? So you see that every year students are taking more than one are participating in more than one dual enrollment opportunity. And you can see here this year, we've really expanded. So this is just all the really great work when we're looking at find the paths to enter the path, stay on the path, complete the path, and all those best practices that, the team just spoke of with the info nights, the application workshops, going into classrooms, the one-on-ones, the tours, all of those are helping, create the opportunity for students to take advantage of dual enrollment more than one time during the academic year. All right, so anyhow, okay, so who entered dual? Okay, so this would be a question, Audrey, do you have an idea of how many percentage of students have entered dual enrollment and have had to withdraw or drop a class?
We do have some data for Counseling 5 over the past few years, and it's a pretty low number. If I remember correctly, probably like 3 students out of like 25 didn't complete. So it's pretty successful.
Yeah, and that's the class that has the, to Linda's point, that's the class that has the the wraparound supports the tutor in it. So that does help with the student retention. Okay.
There's another question, Janae,
Yeah.
that is asking about our high school diploma or equivalency students
Okay.
in dual enrollment ever delaying completion of their high school credentials so they can continue benefiting from the no tuition. I just want to clarify a couple of really important pieces around this. One is part of the reason why I was so stuck on making sure that our adult school students were considered special admit is that taking a class as a dual enrolled student does not start their college career. And so when they come to us, they qualify then for college promise. And so then they get free tuition if they're a full-time student when they transition over to us. And so that actually hasn't been a barrier where students don't want to do it. I think the bigger thing is that students don't want to leave adult school just in general. So I don't think they're delaying their high school diploma or their GED to keep having free classes. If they're wanting to come to college, we do everything we can to connect them to financial aid and resources and grants and scholarships and all of the pieces so that they get as much of their tuition covered when they transition over to us regardless. I do want to say one thing though, what we have been able to do that has been a game changer, and if I'm putting on my undocumented student support cap really quick, is we have been able to create some programs at the adult schools, and Desiree can talk a little bit about this as well, to create a transition class for students who might be 1 year away from being qualified for AB 540. And so because we know AB 540 has been expanded to include adult school, it's easier to get a full year completed at an adult school for the students that might have 1 year or 2 years at the high school that are still missing that third year for eligibility before they come to us. Getting an additional year done with the adult schools makes it significantly easier for us to figure out how to get them AB 540 qualified in that last third year, or if even they can get that done at the adult school. And I think that is kind of the only time that we're thinking about delaying maybe some of their time at the adult schools before they come over, and that is specifically to the student benefit.
Linda is asking, have you noticed students stop attending the adult school once they start dual enrollment?
I tend to check on my students to make sure that they are consistently attending. And if not, we have a conversation, because that really is a requirement to be in the program, is that they keep attending our classes.
And the other piece of that is if they stop attending, we won't sign the form for the next quarter. So if it's a situation that comes up for the student and they can't finish a quarter with us, we just let them know that for the next quarter, they won't be eligible for dual enrollment.
Okay. All right. So in the last section of our dual enrollment in action, we're going to be looking at our areas of growth. We're going to be looking at the consortium level, the transition support team level, student level, and data level. Okay, so areas of growth at the consortium level. We are continuing to have a clear understanding of who's responsible at each agency for dual enrollment roles and responsibility. To be honest with you, like those steps 1 through 6, we just did those, right? Like just right now, all of a sudden it became clear that we needed to lay those steps out and have the adult schools and colleges come together and have the discussion discussion on them. And so that is a new thing that we have just done, right? So we're continually trying to understand how dual enrollment flows between the two systems. And so we're also, it's a constant and continued and consistent opportunity exploration for students. So we're calling it career exploration, but then we realize that, not every student is looking for a career. So we've changed it to opportunity exploration. So we're continually trying to be better at when do we offer opportunity exploration for students. And then we can understand, like, where are they on this pathway so they can be best served, right? Are they language ready? Do they know what pathway they even want? Right. And as we continually want to sort of identify those main time periods of transition, are we actually offering those college info nights soon enough, right? So that we're able to get the applications processed in time, rectify any stumbling blocks. So we're in this next academic year, when we're looking at that shared calendar, we're really going to start looking like, are we starting our opportunity exploration soon enough? And also too, can we maybe, like, right now we're really targeting like our high level ESL, and our CTE and our ASC students, but do we want to start targeting lower level ESL students sooner, right? So that they can start thinking about things. So these are these areas of growth that we're thinking about at that, at the consortium level. Also, to connect better with industry is always something that we're looking at trying to do for our CTE. And then scalability, right? How can we scale this? Internal spreadsheets only last so long. So we're really, we're looking at how can we track students better, which we'll look at in the data section, but scalability of the program, as we see in the data slides already, we're growing. So how can we continue to meet that demand and serve more students? So that's at the consortium level. At the transition team level, the dual enrollment process is different at each college, as we've mentioned. So we're, constantly working to better understand the process and fill in the gaps. Different agency schedules, the adult schools and the colleges don't always align due to the fact that we are on quarter systems. So it goes back to that planning around our shared calendar. Are we offering information sessions at the right time? That's a question that we're always asking ourselves. Also, too, finding ways to best serve different adult school student needs. Just because you're a high school diploma student or a GED student doesn't mean you always have the same goals. If you're an ELL learner, you don't always have the same goals. So how can we really sort of identify individual student needs more successfully? And also too, getting student input, right? Like, how can we survey students and provide follow-up guidance? So those are areas of growth for just the transition team. And then at the student level, does anyone want to take this one, or I can continue. It doesn't. Okay, so something else that we're looking at, right, is just wraparound support for life needs, right? We know our students, childcare, transportation, traffic in our area, so like there's all these life needs that our students have that we want to always work at being able to offer more wraparound supports. And also to continued supporting students with adult ed focused counseling through their college career. When we're looking at that map, find the path, get on the path, continue, succeed, right? Is how do we continue support to students once they actually leave the adult schools, right? At one point, they are going to become fully college students. So how do we make sure that there's these warm handoffs for them throughout their college journey? So that they keep on receiving the level of support that they need. And then student voices, right? We're thinking about, ways of creating networks of student advocates who have completed the path to help mentor current students. So that's an area of growth for us. And then at the data, right, our data team is working on being able to track adult school students through the colleges more effectively in real time. CCC Apply, which we've talked about, it has a lot of barriers, but, it is being revamped right now. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that. The project is called Reimagine Apply. So we're working on getting into the room to advocate for adult school student experience and data for that. Because something that we find is that it doesn't have it's through the lens of high schools, right? The application. So you can say that you're an adult school student, but it has to be through the lens of what is your previous high school. And so that is a barrier for students. So we're trying to get in the room with Reimagine Apply to advocate for students. And also too, there's a new dual enrollment application that's in the works as well. And we're working on getting in the room to advocate for adult school student experience data. Because right now the dual enrollment application that's in the works really is going through the lens of high schools. So there, final questions. We're at the end of the information that we have. Are there any final questions or comments or shared experiences that anyone wants to put in the chat or come off mic?
I just want to clarify, there's been a couple of questions about some of the bigger differences about SB 554 and our dual enrollment at special admits. Our high school dual enrollment students currently do not get priority registration either. And so we have them again parallel that same process. I will tell you that we just formed a work group at our district level to think through our college and who we are prioritizing for priority reg. And so the conversations are definitely happening about whether or not our adult school in particular students for special admins should be considered for our priority registration. But aside from those, the same kind of parallels that happen where they have access to all of the resources on campus. There is special language and support in our guided pathway systems for our adult schools. Those pieces do in fact parallel our high school dual enrollment. The priority reg piece is definitely something we'd like to work on, but our high school students don't get that either right now. So that's another thing for us in particular that it does in fact parallel those systems. I just wanted to clarify that.
There's
Also-
another question in the chat. Are advanced ESL students eligible for dual enrollment if they learn online? Yes, I believe so. So we have advanced ESL students that qualify for dual enrollment, even if they learn online.
Yeah, we have an online advanced ESL class, and those students, we have several of them that are dual enrolled.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us today and all of your really great questions. And again, here is our information. Also, too, I'll put my email in the chat. And also, too, just wanted to thank Cape Tap and for really helping today and having us come here and have the time slot to be able to present this information to you. If you have any further questions for any of us, please reach out and ask, and we will do our best to help support your process of expanding dual enrollment to all CAEP programs. I guess Rhonda has one more question. Ed Code explicitly states that high school CCAP students are eligible for priority registration. Maybe Ed Code will help you in your advocacy efforts. Okay. All right. All right. And so back to Amanda Lee.
Okay, thank you, Janae and team. We really appreciate your time, all of this amazing work. It was a great session. The chat box was going crazy. So I'm going to just remind everyone there was a lot of valuable information shared and links. So if you'd like to take this moment, there's those three dots in your right-hand side of your chat box. If you want to go ahead and save the chat, you should be able to save the chat easily. I know that in that chat also for our presenters, there were some direct messages to you with email addresses. So if you don't get a chance to save the chat, I'll try and save it for you. And with that, thank you all for spending a big part of your morning with us, diving into dual enrollment. The work that everyone does here is always astounding to me, and I really appreciate how you engage with your community and give back. We'd like to thank the team again for being here. And Holly Clark, my colleague, has also popped into the chat the evaluation link. As I mentioned in the beginning, we remediate based on evaluation. So I think this is one that you guys would like to see on the website. So please, please fill out that evaluation. Again, thank you everyone, and we will see you next time.
And then, Mandalee, is it possible to stay on? I would like to make sure I get all the emails.